A year ago, if someone had asked me what betrayal felt like, I probably would have shrugged and said something simple, like losing a friend or getting stabbed in the back at work. But I had no idea betrayal could come from the same people who once held your hand when you were a kid, the same people who called themselves your family. So let me ask you something real quick. What would you do if the people who raised you suddenly decided you were the villain of the story? What if they spent an entire year telling everyone you were a liar, a manipulator, even a thief? And the worst part? You knew the truth, but nobody wanted to hear it. Before we get into this story, I want to say something real quick. If you've ever felt misunderstood by your own family, if you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do, then this story might hit a little close to home. And if stories like this speak to you, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support honestly means a lot. All right, let's start. My grandfather was the kind of man people respected without even trying. You know those old school guys who didn't talk much, but when they did, everyone in the room went quiet? Yeah, that was him. He built his entire life from nothing, came to this country with a couple of dollars in his pocket and worked like crazy until he had something to leave behind for his family. But out of everyone in the family, for some reason, he always had a soft spot for me. Not because I was special, not because I was the favorite, but because I showed up. When everyone else was busy with their lives, chasing money, chasing status, chasing whatever people chase these days, I was the one sitting in his living room listening to his stories. Sometimes he'd talk about the old days. Sometimes we'd just sit there in silence watching baseball. And sometimes he'd just say something random like, "Kid, people show you who they really are when money enters the room." Back then, I didn't really understand what he meant. I do now. When my grandfather got sick, things changed fast. Doctors started coming in and out of the house. My mom and dad suddenly started visiting more often. My sister, who hadn't called him in months, started showing up with flowers and fake smiles. At first, I thought maybe they were just worried about him. But looking back now, I realized something else was going on. They weren't worried about him. They were worried about his will. The day he passed away was quiet. No drama, no big speeches, just silence. And honestly, it hurt more than I expected. He wasn't just my grandfather. He was the one person in the family who actually listened. The funeral came a few days later. A bunch of relatives I hadn't seen in years suddenly appeared. Everyone dressed in black, everyone acting sad. You know the type. The kind of sadness that disappears the second the inheritance conversation starts. And sure enough, a week later we were all sitting in a lawyer's office. That's when everything blew up. The lawyer cleared his throat and started reading the will. Most of it was normal stuff, donations, small amounts to family members. But then he paused, looked down at the paper again, and said my name. He explained that my grandfather had left me something personal, something he believed only I would truly take care of: his house. The room went dead silent. Then my sister laughed. Not a happy laugh, the kind of laugh people make when they're about to start a fight. "Oh, wow," she said. "So you finally did it." I looked at her, confused. "Did what?" "Manipulated him," she said. "You spent all that time with him so you could get the house." At first, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Within minutes, the entire room turned into a courtroom. My parents started asking questions. My aunt shook her head like she'd been suspicious all along. Someone even said the word manipulation. And before I could even process what was happening, my sister dropped the bomb. She told everyone that a few weeks before Grandpa died, money had disappeared from one of his accounts. And guess who had been visiting him the most during that time? Me. The room exploded. People whispering. People staring. My mom looked at me like she didn't even recognize me. And my dad said something I'll never forget. "If this is true, you're not the person I thought you were." I kept telling them they were wrong. I told them I never touched his money. But once people believe a story, it's almost impossible to change their minds. By the time we left that office, the damage was done. The story spread through the family like wildfire. Apparently, I was the greedy grandson who manipulated a dying old man. Apparently, I stole money. Apparently, I tricked him into giving me the house. For an entire year, that's the story everyone believed. Family gatherings stopped. Phone calls stopped. Even friends who heard the rumors started acting weird around me. And the craziest part? My sister played the role perfectly. She acted heartbroken. She acted betrayed. She even cried a few times in front of relatives. But something about the whole thing never felt right. Because my grandfather wasn't stupid. If something like that had happened, he would have said something. Then one night, almost a year later, I was cleaning out a small storage box he had left behind. Inside were old photos, some letters, random stuff from his life. And at the very bottom, there was an envelope. My name was written on it. My heart started pounding before I even opened it. Inside was a letter, and as I started reading it, my entire world shifted. He wrote that he knew something strange had been happening near the end of his life. He said someone had been pressuring him about money, someone he trusted, someone in the family. He didn't write the name in the letter, but then he wrote something else. He said if anything happened after he passed, I should look at the flash drive taped to the back of the envelope. My hands were literally shaking. I flipped the envelope over, and there it was, a tiny black flash drive. When I plugged it into my laptop, there was only one file. A video. The date on the video was 2 weeks before he died. I clicked play. The camera was sitting on his kitchen counter, and the person standing in front of him was my sister. She wasn't crying. She wasn't smiling. She was yelling, demanding he change the will, threatening to cut him off, even telling him he'd regret it if he didn't fix the mistake. My grandfather looked tired, but calm. And at one point he said something that still echoes in my head. Money shows who people really are. Then the video ended. I sat there staring at the screen for what felt like hours. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The accusations, the rumors, the missing money story. She had created the perfect distraction, blame me before anyone had the chance to question her. And for an entire year, it worked. But not anymore. A few weeks later, there was a memorial dinner for my grandfather. Almost the entire family showed up. People laughing, people talking, like the past year of drama never happened. My sister was there too, smiling like always. At one point, someone even made a joke about the house situation. Everyone laughed. Except me. That's when I stood up, pulled out my laptop, and said something simple. I think Grandpa wanted everyone to see something. The room went quiet. My sister smiled instantly, and when the video started playing, you could hear a pin drop. Nobody said a word. Nobody moved. They just watched. When the video ended, the silence was heavier than anything I've ever felt. My mom looked like she was about to faint. My dad couldn't even look at me. And my sister? She just sat there, completely frozen. The truth had finally walked into the room, and there was nowhere left to hide. That night didn't magically fix everything. Families don't heal that fast. But one thing changed forever. The story. For the first time in a year, people finally knew the truth. And sometimes, that's enough. Because at the end of the day, my grandfather was right. Money doesn't just change people. It reveals them. And the people who tried to bury the truth ended up exposing themselves. So if you ever feel like the whole world believes the wrong story about you, just remember something. The truth has a strange way of showing up when the time is right. And when it does, it doesn't whisper. It walks straight into the room and says, "Game over."